Hey everybody, this is Perch. Keep in mind for just a moment that there are almost an infinite, well, not an infinite because there's a finite number of people, but there's 1,000 or 100,000 different things that people would like to see. If you say, I'm going to do a comic book about a rock, and this rock, not Dwayne Johnson the Rock, but a literal rock, and this rock is going to fall in love with a chipmunk, and it's going to explore interspecies slash geological relationships. There will be somebody out there who will be like, "Yep, sign me up for that. That sounds good. I want it." And that is true with everything. And right now in comics, what we see are invariably with any topic, any pitch, anything that comes up, there will be somebody who will be like, this is finally for me. Excellent. Great. I'm the market. The challenge you have is that to be a sustainable business, you have to do more than find like the one person. And I think that comics in particular, more so than other industries, it fools itself on a regular basis into believing that, if there's one of those people out there, there must be a million of those people out there. And so, we're gonna find that there's, 5, 10, 20 people who are excited about this idea. And it always, where it gets really screwy is when some of the people who are excited about the idea are the creators themselves. And it's like, we're going to create this, and we believe that there is a huge audience out there. That's probably the generous way of looking at this. There's another school of thought that says that the creators, people who are making this stuff, know that there isn't an audience out there, that they're pretty much it, or them and their small group of friends. And either they're doing it in the hopes of, hey, if we kill off everything else and only do these books, then people will be forced to buy it, and then our way will be the popular way. If that's what anybody thinks, they're insane, because that's not how life works. You don't just get people to move to liking what you like because by making everything else unavailable. It doesn't. People just stop buying anything. Or what I think is frankly more likely, there's just this echo chamber type thing that happens where the two factors coming together. One is all your friends are excited about your idea. Nobody is willing to tell you, hey, this thing you're making is stupid. Don't do it. Nobody's willing to tell you that because they don't want to hurt your feelings, or maybe the comic industry is a very small, shallow pond, and if you say something negative, then you could get ostracized. If you get ostracized, then you won't get the job, and then everything kind of falls apart. That's definitely true. But the thing that I think goes along with that makes so many of these mistakes happen, is that it's what we call playing with house money. And it means that in really large companies, I'll give you an example. In the tech industry, there's a company like Microsoft, and Microsoft is rich, and there's thousands of people who work for Microsoft. And of those thousands of people who work for Microsoft, let's say 20% of them are making all the money. They're the ones who are working on Azure Cloud, or they're the ones who are working on Office 365, or they're the ones who are really pulling in the money that's sustaining that company. And it's probably more than 20%, but it's definitely less than 50%. So what do the other people work on? Well, some of them are working on what they call incubation projects. These are things that aren't making any money, but they believe that for strategic reasons, or for future looking reasons, there's things that they should work on, they should focus on, because eventually, they'll make money, and they'll be, as maybe the money in the Azure cloud goes down, these businesses will go up. That happens. But there's also people who are just there who are, doing kind of pet projects because nobody is stopping them, and they're not making any money. They don't matter, but they're continuing to invest and sink cash into it, and they kind of fly under the radar. Nobody really knows they exist. And those teams, they say, those teams play with house money, meaning those teams are unprofitable. Those teams, if there was scrutiny, would be shut down extremely quickly. But because we're so rich, and because there's cash floating around, it happens, and there's no real, nobody really thinks, oh, I need to hurry up and ship this software, or do some market analysis to make sure it works, because it's not my money. So what do I care? I'm happy to spend it. And invariably, what happens in big companies is eventually somebody comes around and says, "Hey, what's this team doing?" And then it's like, "Nothing." Okay. Well, I just saved. It's usually when a new VP or somebody comes in and they want to make a quick splash. So one of the quick ways in a big company they make that splash is they cut fat, they cut costs. They say, "Okay, I just saved the company $200 million." It's like, "Oh, awesome! How'd you do that?" "Well, I cut a team that wasn't producing anything." And everybody's happy, and they all clap and cheer, and then three more teams spring up out of nowhere to spend money. So it's cyclical. It all goes back to the same place eventually. In comics, there aren't millions and millions of dollars to throw around, but there are thousands and thousands of dollars to roll around, and that there is a mentality in comics, and this, I'm just saying that this as kind of directly as I can, where if you're an editor, for example, and you're trying to get 8 titles, out the door, then typically speaking, you've got a couple of those that are your breadwinners, the ones that are bringing in money, and then you've got some others that are experiments. And depending on the oversight of that company, and this is kind of the key thing to pay attention to, depending on the oversight, if your really strong titles are doing well, nobody really asks too much about your weaker titles. Nobody asks too much about the bottom selling ones, unless there's a crunch, unless they draw attention. But generally speaking, they fly under the radar. And this happens at comic companies all the time. It takes leadership, like real leadership. And there's a lot of management books that will tell you this, of like, hey, if you're coming into a team that's working on, say, 10 things, don't be distracted by the 2 that are going really, really well. You need to actually put the time, the energy into understanding, what's going on with the other 8. Are they successful? Are they failing? Are they, just maybe they're good strategic things you're doing, but they're not making money right now, but they will eventually? You've got to look at what is the picture of the other 8. But it is a very, very common trap for people to focus on the top 2, for them to go, "Oh, look at this, Batman and Detective Comics are selling great. This is wonderful. I know. Let's throw out a punchline one shot that will do great." And you've got some other titles there. We don't. Why should we spend time on those? Those aren't the ones making all the money. We need to spend 80% of our time on the 20% of our titles that are making 80% of the money. Does that make sense? It's a weird way of thinking, but it is a trap that a lot of these comic publishers fall into. And so you have a lot of projects that kind of, wander around, not really, that nobody really pays attention to. And invariably they are made up of things that nobody really wants or is asking for. And when you combine that with a culture that does not do focus group testing, it doesn't really look at market analysis and all the rest, then, this is how you get here. You get here because, even an employee would sit here and look at their job and say, well, I know that these 2 projects that I'm really, really fond of are not doing very well. In fact, how many times actually have you heard, and I've heard this in comics a ton, where somebody will say, "Yeah, I'm working on these 8 books, but my favorite is this one." And I'm like, "The one that isn't selling?" They're like, "Yeah, this is my favorite. This is one this is my pet passion. This is my project. I know it doesn't do very well, but I can't get rid of it because it's the one I love." And I always think in the back of my head, you should kill that one right now. You should kill that project because it's not successful. And it's becoming your blind spot. It's becoming the thing that you're investing a lot of time, energy, money, and attention to. And you're putting the successful stuff on autopilot, and the successful stuff also needs attention and care, but you've warped the model. It's natural and kind of human behavior. We get things that we really get enamored by, things that we really like, and then we start putting our attention there. And nobody with a straight face can say, "Hey, I'm working on 5 things and they're all equally getting 20% of my time. I've perfectly had the things I'm working on are all receiving equal attention, equal treatment." Nobody does that. You find there's certain things that you like better than other things, and then naturally your time is going to go to the things you like. It's just how we're wired as people. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, other than you need to have the checks and balances to make sure that you're not causing stuff that's successful to suffer because you're putting time to the things you like. This is like the roughest statement, but it's one that my grandfather taught me, and it's one that was reinforced by an uncle in Japan, and just it's very much a cultural belief there. It's work isn't supposed to be fun. I remember hearing that as a kid. I'm like, oh, that's a bummer, and I know that flies in the face of everything you hear today about work and about how systems are and what makes a good culture and all the rest. And that's an extreme statement. Of course, you should try and make your work enjoyable. Of course, you should try and make your work rewarding. Of course, you should, and you need to for your own mental sanity. But there's also an element of truth to that statement. Work is work. Business is business. It's not meant to be super happy playtime fun time. It's not. That's not what work is. And I think in a lot of cases, our current culture, especially in the West, is a lot of work needs to be fun, and that's how we wind up excusing things that really shouldn't exist. And I think in the context of comics, it's why you see a lot of weird kind of pet projects that aren't necessarily successful. They're being shielded by the 20% of titles at the top. And if you think about it, and it would be brutal. It would break the culture of the comics community if you came in there and said, "Hey, we're going to just chop the bottom 20%." And I like where I started with this video. I totally get that there's that guy out there who really wants to see the Rock and the Squirrel get it on, but out of our target market, that represents 0.02%, and it sucks that 0.02% is not going to have their Squirrel Rock romantic comedy, but that sucks. Tough. We can't stay in business if we're appealing to the 0.02%. And no company can put out enough titles to appeal to all these markets. It's just not going to work, and that totally blows. And I know there's some people on this video right now gnashing their teeth who are like, he's saying that we should get rid of anything that's not ultra popular. I'm not saying that, but I'm not exactly not saying that either. Yeah, you want to make sure that the stuff that's ultra popular is very well covered. And then you want to make very smart strategic bets about how you expand your business. And because it would be nice for this person who lives in an apartment 3 apartments down from me, that is not a good reason. It never is. Well, I feel like I'm like Mr. Grouch here. Work's not supposed to be fun. I mean, yeah, you should try and make work fun. But fun is not the primary goal of work. I don't know, unless you're in the porn industry, I guess. Anyway, hey, what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Most importantly, thanks for listening.